Hey everybody, and good Monday evening to you. Thanks for checking out tonight's edition of Weather for Weather Geeks. We've had some really nice weather over the last few days. Yes, it's been cold in the mornings, but the afternoons have been bright and sunny, and we have not had the wildfire smoke that we had last week. These bright days, nothing all that unusual for this time of the year. Typically in September and October, we have some stretches of pretty sunny weather with big sprawling areas of high pressure drifting across the northern tier of states. We're kind of getting into the tail end of our sunniest part of the year, which is roughly May to October. Then a big jump in the number of cloudy days by November, and certainly by December and January, the clouds tend to really dominate in meteorological winter here across our region, thanks in part to our proximity to the Great Lakes. All right, autumn, astronomical autumn gets underway Tuesday morning. Of course, in the meteorological or climatological seasons, we've been in autumn for a few weeks now. That started on September 1st, but astronomical autumn gets underway in the northern hemisphere at 9:31 a.m. tomorrow morning. That's the moment in which the sun's direct rays are right on the equator and on their way south over the next several weeks to a few months, and by December 21st, they'll be over the Tropic of Capricorn in the southern hemisphere, and that means summertime starts in the southern hemisphere and wintertime starts here in the northern hemisphere. All right, tomorrow is the equinox, but contrary to popular belief, it's not the day in which we have exactly 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. A couple of reasons for that. One is actually our latitude. We don't live near the equator. It's much closer to 12 and 12 near the equator. We're at about 40 degrees north, and so there's a little bit of a lag when it comes to sunrise and sunset times being kind of exactly 12 hours apart. The other reason is we define sunrise and sunset a little bit differently, and that can make a difference by a minute or two than if we defined sunrise and sunset as the moment the middle of the sun's disk breaks the horizon. We'd be much closer to 12 and 12 on the equinox, but we define sunrise as the moment in which the top of the disk breaks the horizon. Sunset, then, is not defined as when the bottom of the disk first hits the horizon or the middle. It's when the top of the disk, in other words, the entire sun, drops below the horizon. This kind of subtle difference, in addition to our latitude, means that it's not really 12 and 12 on the equinox. In a few days, I think it's around the 25th, we'll get as close as we do get to having 12 hours of daylight and 12 hours of darkness. Right now, our sunset times, that's this line right here. We're about 7:21 on our sunset times right now. Our day length is the yellow line right here. Again, getting pretty close to 12 hours. And on our way, of course, to the darkness of winter, the big gap in the sunset times here, of course, due to the time change, which is on November 1st this year. Suddenly on November 1st, our sunrise, or our sunset, I should say, will be about 5:18 to 5:20. Yikes. It's coming up in just about 6 weeks. We are, of course, losing daylight at a pretty rapid pace at this time of the year. On September 1st, we had 13 hours and 5 minutes of daylight. But on October 1st, we have 11 hours and 44 minutes of daylight. So we lose about an hour and 20 minutes of daylight during the month of September. And that fast loss of daylight is peaking about right now through about the first week of October. Then the pace in which we lose the daylight does start to slow a little bit later in the fall season. Nationally big weather story, of course, is Beta. Yeah, we're onto the Greek alphabet across the tropical Atlantic. Beta is bringing heavy rains to parts of Texas, including, of course, the Houston area. Not expecting any impacts from that tropical system here. What we will see is more beautiful weather for the next couple of days. High pressure drifts across and keeps us high and dry for the next handful of days. This front that you see on the weather map to our north and west is of little consequence for us. Of course, last week we had a lot of haze, very weird looking sky at times, especially early and late in the day, thanks mostly to the wildfire smoke emanating from the big wildfires out west. Some of this high-level smoke is going to try to drift back overhead over the next few days, but it's going to be thinner. I don't think it's going to be as noticeable as last week, not as much of a story. But you might notice the sky is not as pristine looking, not as completely just deep blue over the next couple of days. But again, I don't think it'll be much of a big deal. Temperatures are going to warm nicely as we head towards the end of the week. In fact, some backyard thermometers are going to see 80 or better, I think, Friday and into Saturday. But you'll notice at the tail end of the 7-day forecast, a drop is coming early next week, and boy, it does look chilly as we flip the calendar into October. Look how amplified the pattern's about to become. Much stronger jet stream will emerge across the lower 48 states as we go into next week. Big trough will dig across the eastern U.S., big ridge out west. Bad news for the fire situation out west. It is going to be hot and dry again along the west coast, but we will be under the influence of that mega trough as we welcome in October. I think during the middle and latter portions of next week, it is looking pretty darn chilly. Early October, it's not unusual to have chilly weather, of course, but it's going to be a pretty big change from the relatively balmy weather that we'll have this weekend. So no surprise on the 8 to 14 day outlook from the Climate Prediction Center. Pretty good odds of cooler than average temperatures being the rule around and east of the Mississippi River, while the west bakes in some early autumn heat. That is it for me tonight. Thanks for watching the December, boy, talking way too much about the upcoming fall and winter season. It's the September 21st edition of Weather for Weather Geeks. I'll see you back here, same time, same place on Tuesday.